Okay, I have a great show today. I have a legend with me. His name is Dick Morris. He has been involved in politics and getting people elected to high offices for many decades. And we are going to be talking about what the heck is going on in the United States of America and in the White House. Dick, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
That's great to be here. Thank you.
You are brilliant when it comes to helping people get into office. You have a mind that understands the political landscape better than just about anybody. However, I read last night that Iran is openly bragging about President Joe Biden approving another $10 billion of released money to Iran. Iran has been accused of being behind the Hamas attacks on Israel, funding Hezbollah and others. Why on earth would Joe Biden and the White House give another $10 billion to Iran?
Well, Iran is a close ally of China. Iran ships 3 million barrels of oil a day, and over two-thirds of it, 2 billion barrels a day, goes to China. And China is really Iran's sponsor. And in giving the money to Iran, Biden is really helping to pay back the debt he owes to China for all the bribes he's gotten from China. There's no other way to explain it. When Biden took office, the first thing he did was to lift the oil embargo that Trump had imposed on Iran. And Iran at the time had to only had about eight, and Iran suffered horribly as a result, and its economy went to hell. And when Trump left office, Iran had only $8 billion of foreign currency reserves, which is a little less than Haiti had. And then Biden turned the spigot back on and said it's okay to export oil. And they now have 80 billion in reserves, much of which they're using to help Hamas in this invasion. And then in addition, he unfroze 6 billion of assets we had frozen in return ransom for the hostages. Now he's adding another 10 billion that we had frozen in funds that were in Iraq that Iran in normal times would have claim to. So all of this is an effort to empower Iran, which in turn empowers China. And it's one of a long list of things that I talk about in my book, where Biden has overtly acted against the interests of the United States and for those of China.
Okay, so let me make sure that I follow this. Biden is compromised by money that he took from China, that his children and brothers took from China. China is the sponsor for Iran. Iran is the sponsor for terrorism. I mean, ultimately, we have a compromised president who's allowing the flow of money to attack our allies in the Middle East.
Said it exactly right, precisely. Hamas gives Iran gives Hamas $100 million a year, and Qatar, the other country that's supplying Hamas, that is allegedly a U.S. ally, gives Hamas 360 million a year. And those two countries are really the reason that Hamas was able to slaughter 1,000 Jews by invading Israel.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. I want to get deeper into this. Before we do that, though, I know that you've been involved in politics for how long?
Well, I'm 76, so I would say 60 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So during that time, you've had a huge impact on the U.S. political system. Do you think that Democrats are going to allow President Biden to run for president in 2024, or are they somehow going to convince him to sit out? We'll cover for your crimes, protection, blackmail. What do you see coming down the pike?
Well, Biden has fallen perhaps irretrievably behind Trump. Trump is now leading him by between 4 and 7 points, depending on the poll. And Trump lost the popular vote in 2020 by 3 points. So that's about a 7 to 10 point gain. And among Black voters, Trump got 12% of the Black vote in 2020. Now he's polling at 27. He got 26% of the Hispanic vote in 2020. Now the polls show him getting 39. And with under 25 voters, he lost by 10, and now the polls show him winning by 12. So this turnaround is eating away at the base of the Democratic Party. Now, the problem is that it's going to be very hard for the Democrats to replace Biden. First of all, the filing deadlines for the primaries are upon us. And by January 1st, there won't be any primaries that he can enter. And you can't get the delegates except through a primary. Um, I personally believe that what may happen is that Biden may take all of the delegates that he's awarded in essentially uncontested races and then go to the convention and release them and say you're free to vote your conscience if they have any, and to set up at that point a floor fight for the Democratic nomination, which will probably be the left wing of the party, which is Newsom and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, against the center, which is probably Hillary if she gets in, and Buttigieg. And it'll be a real food fight. And the advantage for the Democrats is it'll be telescoped within the period of a convention, which is 4 days or 5 days. And backroom deals will be able to predominate. I don't think it's going to affect the election much because I think Trump is on a roll and will be able to get a vast popular support. And I think the fractures in the Democratic Party that this process will reveal, I think, will help him. There's one other scenario let me go through. There's a guy named Dean Phillips who is running for president as a Republican, as a Democrat against Biden in the Democratic primary. And he has a very ingenious campaign. He's saying, he's a congressman, he's saying, I like Joe Biden. I think he's been a fine president, and I'm not going to change anything, but I'll live for the 4 years and he won't. And it's a way that people can vote against Biden while still loving him. And Biden is not on the ballot in New Hampshire. And I
Yes.
think Dean Phillips, who is going to very likely defeat him by a lot. Biden has to depend on write-ins, and that may kindle a momentum for Phillips that leads him to take a lot of the early primaries from Biden. We need to see if that materializes.
Yeah, I saw that he's counting so much on South Carolina that they didn't file to be on the ballot. But just this morning, I read that New Hampshire said, "No, we are going to still be the first place, and you're not on there." So he may have his ego or this drive for South Carolina may end up hurting him in the long run because New Hampshire's not just going to roll over and take second place.
Exactly. And Biden got 60% of the vote in South Carolina, but he finished fifth in New Hampshire. So that's why he displaced New Hampshire, but the New Hampshire refuses, as you say, to roll over. So that could be an impediment for Biden.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So you wrote a book about Trump making a comeback. I know that you've had many conversations with him, but you have a new book out that is very intriguing to me about the corruption of the Biden family, the inside story of Biden's dark money. Such a great title. I love that title. As someone who has to work through titles every day for YouTube videos, but what makes you believe that Biden or the Biden family has dark secrets or dark money schemes? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think that Biden was a poor senator impecunious. He had very little money. His net worth when he left the Senate was only $29,000, not million. And
Oh,
then as vice president, he began to make a decent salary and he wrote a book and his net worth rose to 1 million. Now it's 10 million. And the space in between was largely 2017, 18, 19, and 20, when he was running for president or about to run, but out of office as vice president. And his main source of income during that time was China. Uh, China gave University of Pennsylvania $58 million to fund what's called the Penn Biden Center at the University of Pennsylvania. And that was Biden's job. He made $1 million a year from that. And by the way, Blinken, the Secretary of State, was on the payroll, and 10 members of the current Biden administration, all at high levels, were on the Chinese payroll. So we basically have a president who was paid by China in his last job. That's, of course, only the public money. There also has been, there's about $10 million that Biden paid taxes on, that where there's no explanation of the source. And by process of elimination, many people, including Senator Ted Cruz, have concluded that these were bribes. What Biden did was he dispatched Hunter Biden, his son, James Biden, and Frank Biden to go around the world starting up businesses dependent on the Biden's name. They were kind of like a franchise. And the only thing that the Bidens would bring to it is Joe's influence. And they would do corrupt deals with everybody, oligarchs, drug dealers, dictators, despots. And the deals would always involve a cut for Joe Biden. And that cut would be disguised by shell corporations. But now the Comer Committee has subpoenaed the bank records, and we now know of about $250,000 that Biden personally got. But we're going to know about millions by the time that is played out. Now, the key point that I make in my book, though, is not only what China gave to Biden, but what Biden gave to China. I have a list of 20 policy actions by the US government that Biden controlled that benefited China and hurt the United States. We just talked about one in Iran. But COVID, China has never been held to account for starting COVID. For answering the basic question, why were they working to perfect a virus that would be more transmissible to humans and more deadly? Why have they closed the Wuhan lab to any foreign observers? Nobody's permitted to investigate it. And China says it was a bat bite from the wet market. I think that's stupid. I think and the consensus is that it was a leak from a lab. But I have a further thought. I think that it was a deliberate biological attack on the United States to stop Trump from being reelected. Trump had just imposed tariffs on China, which were very costly. They reduced Chinese exports to the United States by 30% and set in motion a recession and now a depression that still grips China today. And I think that they had to get rid of Trump, and the Wuhan lab coronavirus was the best way to do it. And Biden has let them get away scot-free with that.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard some of the Trump, sound bites on the internet of him saying, we put on all of these tariffs. No one went after China like we did. We got farmers $20 billion. All that money came from China. So you're saying, this president finally stands up to China, extracts all this money on behalf of the United States, and really puts a dent in their economy. That's the motive.
Yeah. And I think the opportunity was to spread this horrible virus around the world. The timing is very suspicious. It started literally in 2020, January, February of 2020. So I think that it was intended to defeat Trump in the election. That's one of about 20 things I cite in the book that are policies that Biden took to advantage China. One of the big ones is that all of the efforts at renewable resources, electric cars, solar batteries, wind turbines, are powered by rare earth minerals. And the United States used to have a monopoly on them. Then we gave it away stupidly. It's ridiculous. I'll tell you how. The rare earth minerals were the International Agency for Atomic Energy, IAEA, asserted jurisdiction over rare earth minerals. And it was absurd because they're not radioactive. They just happen to be found next to uranium most of the time. And they imposed tremendous reporting and paperwork requirements on the rare earth mineral mines. And they were so expensive that they left the United States and moved to China. And China is not subject to the IAEA because it's not a member. They
Mm,
acquired basically our monopoly
yeah.
over rare earth minerals. And now, every time a rare earth mineral mine is proposed for the United States, Biden finds an environmental reason to kill it. The biggest one he just killed is called the Boundary Lakes mine in northern Minnesota. And it contains 95% of the world's nickel and a huge amount of all the other resources. And Biden killed it because it was endangering a lake, he said. So he can't move with any of his environmental initiatives without paying China for rare earth minerals and using their batteries and giving them a stranglehold over our economy. And he cites as the reason why he can't do that, preserving a lake. Um, there, there, I'll give other examples. There are 350,000 students, Chinese students, now studying in the United States. Trump set up an office in the FBI to investigate them and to be sure there was no intelligence gathering going on. It's true that every one of those students is briefed by Chinese intelligence when they go to the US, and when they come home, they're debriefed. And we've had many instances of spying as a result of it. Biden closed the office that Trump set up in the FBI to investigate Chinese spying in his first year in office, claiming it was racial profiling. Um, one of the
He just keeps gifting them all of
That's it.
these incredible opportunities and gifts.
He let them open up a base in Cuba, which Kennedy almost took us into war to stop Russia from doing. He the China is now working overtime at dislodging the U.S. from its supremacy in the global currencies. And China set up the BRICS group: Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and South Africa. And 10 other countries, including Iran, have joined it. And they're saying we will not sell our oil for dollars. We want gold. And that's a bid to topple the US dollar supremacy over the world's economic system.
Yeah,
If they succeed, what that will mean is that when we have to fund our defense budget and it's a deficit and we need to borrow the money, we must first convert it into an international currency before we can do that. And it's an opportunity to make it harder and harder for the US to borrow money to finance the defense budget. And I think it's an effort by China to gain military superiority over the United States.
yeah. Wow. You probably saw this yesterday, Dick, but President Biden invites China to come to San Francisco and host them. As they're driving, as the president of the United States and the president of China are driving through San Francisco, there's nothing but the flag from China. There's no American flags. As I saw pictures, I mean, every now and then you'd see like one little handheld one, right? But these big, bigger than this one,
Yeah.
massive flags for China. You would think you were in China. They have their meeting. She says, the world's big enough for both of us. Let's not go to war. Biden says, whatever you want, big guy. And then he says, you know what? I'm actually not going to go to dinner with you. I'm going to go to dinner with, CEOs in San Francisco, including Elon Musk. Is this not a snub
No,
to the president?
but you're missing a big thing.
Okay.
In his speech, Biden referred to Xi as a dictator. And Blinken, the Secretary of State, basically had a fit and made all kinds of hand motions to change that. And then China got it removed from the official transcript of the meeting. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, the examples of Chinese control are absolutely incredible. They have a thing called the Belt and Road Initiative, which is a program that sounds idealistic. It's to build airports and roads and bridges and tunnels in the third world. But it's really an effort to control the resources of the minerals of the third world, including rare earth minerals. Because what China does is it lends them the money for these facilities, and they're basically dictators who pocket the money, put it in their Swiss bank accounts. And when the time comes to repay it, they don't do it. And China, in the meantime, has acquired a lien in return for the loan on their rare earth minerals, on their uranium supply. And China, as a result, is going around Africa acquiring liens and ownership rights to rare earth minerals, all designed to squeeze the United States, all made possible because of Biden's move to switch from gasoline, which we have plentifully, to rare earth mineral batteries, where we have surrendered our monopoly.
Wow. Okay, going back to something you said, Dick, you said I think the figure was China had given UPenn $58 million. Biden was getting money, Blinken and 10 other people in the White House cabinet. Isn't that the same university where they found top secret documents that Vice
Yes,
President Biden took out of the White
yes,
House?
yes. Those documents were at the Penn Biden Center that China funded, that I've been talking about. And it raises the further question: they're prosecuting Trump for keeping classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, where there was nobody there. And Biden is not being prosecuted when his documents were at the Penn Biden Center, which is crawling with the Chinese.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. That so they basically were paying the storage fee,
Yeah,
had access to the rooms and all of that. Oh my gosh. I mean, like anybody with half a brain can put two and two together, right? Oh, it's wild. Okay. Here's a question that I have. And I don't know if your book covers this or if you have any insight on this, but I don't I don't see Joe Biden as particularly bright or original based on how he graduated in his class, his 50 years in Washington D.C., and how many times he plagiarized other people. So, it did he learn by watching other people how to establish this pay to play scheme, or is this something that he came up with on his own?
yeah. I don't know, but it doesn't take a genius to steal money. And he dispatched his family around the world to make corrupt deals and cut him in. Um, Frank Biden, for example, his brother, went to uh, Costa Rica and said, "I'm an expert now on renewable energy, solar energy." He had no background, but he declared that. And the Biden administration funded his efforts to develop solar energy with a grant from the government. And Biden, of course, was cut in on that. Uh, the Bidens went to, well, there's one particular story, by the way, about Frank Biden that needs to be exposed. Frank lost his driver's license when he was 20 years old for crazy, reckless driving. And when he was 22, he's 8 years younger than Joe. He got a friend of his to he got a friend of his to rent a Jaguar, and he got in the West Coast, San Francisco, and he got in the car and they drove 80 miles an hour. And Frank was operating the stick shift while the friend was doing the gas pedal. The friend didn't have a license either. They hit a guy and killed him, a man, middle-aged man who was crossing the street. His two daughters, who were young, were both made orphans by that. The mother had already died. And they sued, and the driver collected. But the judge hit hit Frank Biden with a $290,000 payment to each of the orphans, 580,000 together. And Frank Biden refused to pay it. Skip town. They put a lien on his property that still exists, and they couldn't find him. He hid out, and his hiding place was his brother's house, and was Joe's house. And then when Frank made millions in Costa Rica and other deals, he still refused to pay his court judgment for these orphans who were horribly messed up by his driving.
Wow. Unbelievable. That's just gross.
And
Wow.
when their attorney, their guardian, got in touch with Biden's Senate office and said, will the senator help find his brother? Brother was living in his house. Joe Biden said, I don't know where he is. I can't help, but I sympathize with you.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Well, and then, Biden ends up stealing Jill Biden away from her husband by dating her while she's still married. That's for a whole nother podcast. This has been absolutely wonderful. Final question for you, Dick. Is there any doubt in your mind that Trump is going to be the GOP frontrunner? And also, is there any chance that they're going to jail him for all of these crazy indictments?
Yeah, the answer is no and yes. He absolutely will win the nomination. He's just broken 60% of the vote in the polls, and everybody else is in single digits. I think that it's entirely possible that some of these proceedings lead to convictions, and it's possible, particularly on gag orders, that some judges try to lock him up. I think the more they do to Donald Trump, the better he does, because it's such a symbol of being persecuted by the deep state. And everybody gets that this is a partisan persecution, that this has nothing to do with the merits. And the more Trump suffers for that, in a way, the better he gets. He was being driven to Miami to be booked and fingerprinted. And he called me from the car and he said, how are my polls? And I said, great, gained 11 points. You should get arrested more often. And I think that that's really true. By the way, while that's going on, I think the stuff we've been talking about will lead to Joe Biden's impeachment by the House. I don't think the Senate will convict him, but I think that his scandals will way overshadow Donald Trump's, because Trump's concerned technicalities in the election law and fanciful schemes, whereas Biden's involved real bribes from China. Basically, RICO is a statute where you can go after people who are involved in a corrupt enterprise. But at the core of that enterprise, there has to be an illegal act, like a drug deal or something. The core of the RICO case is being brought against Trump. The only thing that's at the core of it is that he tried to win the election. He claimed he did. He said the results of 2020 were fraudulent. He said the vote count was fraudulent. He demanded recount. He demanded investigations. There's no crime there, and
Yeah.
there's not even any allegation of a crime. So I think even if they're able to get these charges convicted by a DC jury, that they'll be thrown out on appeal. And I don't think it'll stop Trump from being elected president.
Yeah. Even Fonnie Willis in Georgia said yesterday, uh, even if we move at lightning speed, his trial isn't going to end until after he's possibly president. And then it will be tied up in the appellate court for years. And so she was kind of admitting defeat,
Yeah.
if you read between the lines. Dick Morris, this has been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for writing Corrupt. I'm going to make sure to put a link down below. Corrupt, the inside story of Biden's dark money. I went through it. It has so many details. You do not miss the details. That's what I love about you and your mind. But where can people follow you if they want to continue to stay in the loop and get your information?
Well, my website is dickmorris.com. And every single morning of my life for 12 years, I do a video on that day's events in politics and my opinions of them. And you can subscribe to that at dickmorris.com for free. And I'll send them to you. I send them to 250,000 people every morning.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again for coming on. I know how busy
And
you are. Best of
say
luck
hi
with
to
the
your
book,
dad
and
for
I'll
me.
make sure to put a link to that down below.
Say hi to your father for me.
Okay, bye-bye.